All right, what's up, Dragon Brood? We are starting to get close to having all the cards available for Brothers War, and there was a lot of cool stuff to talk about today, and there was a lot of cards. So what we're going to do is we're just going to be talking about the uncommons, the rares, and the mythics. Yes, there's a couple of commons that have probably find their way in the decks, and we'll talk about that after we have the whole set previewed or spoiled or whatever they want to call it on another video, so that way we can kind of nitpick all the things that we see that get released together at the end. But for now, let's go look at these higher end rarity cards and see what we had previewed today for Brothers War. But Meticulous Excavation. This is a 1 mana enchantment, 2 colorless and a white to return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. If that has unearth, instead you exile it, then return it to your hand. Activate this only during your turn. Wow, okay. Oh, okay, I see why. So they're trying to make sure, like, because of the effect of unearth, you're exiling it and then you're returning it to your hand. I kind of like this if you have something that has like a cool enter the battlefield ability. The problem is it is 3, so it's not like it's like the cheapest thing to do, though. You know what I mean? Like, you could pay 3, return something, recast it. Kind of cool if it's like, you know, one of those cards that like exiles a creature until this is removed from play or something like that. It also says permanent. So it could be an enchantment. It could be a planeswalker you want to reset. It could be a lot of things. Like, this has some utility. This seems like it's probably really good in draft, but at best aggressively medium in 60 card Magic. But I will say for Commander, I can think of a few things I could do with this. Especially if you have some cards that, like, maybe a creature enters the battlefield and you get to draw a card, or maybe you want to reuse like Dockside Extortionist to make more mana. Like, this could be really cool. This could be really cool. I could see this being a thing. Geology Enthusiast. 3 colorless, blue for a human artificer, 2/5. At the beginning of your end step, create a tapped Power Stone token. Pay 6, draw a card, and put a +1/+1 counter on this card. Man, so just make a mana, basically. Make a mana producing artifact. The mana can only be spent to cast non-artifact spells, so that's a thing, but like, this probably isn't good, but I feel like in some formats, if you had a way to trick this into play or ramp it into play, just getting another mana artifact every turn seems really good. And then eventually you get to draw cards and power this up. Not that that's probably a huge deal, but just getting a card every turn is nice and instant speed. But yeah, this is probably just fine. I'm probably not going to find its way into many decks. If it does, it's probably as like a one of or something really late in the game. Because honestly, even if you don't have the Power Stones, you could just pay 6 to draw a card. So this does have some value in and of itself. It's just not crazy impressive. So I could see it getting played. I just don't think it's going to be like a big top tier staple or anything. This thing costs $1 million. So Woodcaller Automaton. It is 10 mana for an artifact creature construct. It has prototype of 2 green to turn into a 3/3. Otherwise, it's an 8/8. And then when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, untap target land you control. It becomes a treefolk creature with haste and power and toughness equal to this card's power and toughness. It's still a land. Wow. Okay, so when this enters the battlefield, oh, well, if you cast it. So it's not like if it just came into play. So you have to cast it. You untap a land. The land becomes a treefolk that's equal to the size of the automaton. Wow. That feels really good, but at the same time, I'm not like, on the one hand, I kind of want to say we're never going to play this for 10, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't know if there's like a pile of things that make Power Stones. Maybe you are with 10 mana on like turn 5. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have no idea. Maybe 10's not a crazy number anymore, but on the prototype side, just 4 mana for a 3/3 seems doable. I don't know if you want to, but you'd be paying 4 mana to get 2 3/3s effectively, right? Because you turn a land into a 3/3 and you get 3/3. And that actually makes it pretty reasonable. I mean, honestly, that actually makes it pretty good, even as a late game top deck. If you're trying to get past your opponent's like 1 chump blocker or whatever to do lethal damage. No other abilities on it, but it seems fine. Yeah, like, it's hard to judge these prototype creatures, to be honest with you. I feel like, because I'm looking at most of them feeling like there's probably a home for this, but there can't be a home for all of them. Like, just in a competitive format, some of them are just going to be worse than others. But this is one that's probably at least worth experimenting with, I would say. I honestly feel like the Power Stones may start warping what we see as a castable spell, right? Because normally, once you start looking at stuff over 7, you're like, okay, I need a very specific deck. I need this power, this ability to be game breaking, you know, whatever. But if we just have a bunch of Power Stones, then getting to 8, 10, 12 mana may not be a problem. I have no clue. We've got Artificer's Dragon. It's a 6 colorless artifact creature dragon. It's a 4/4 with flying. You can pay a red. Artifact creatures you control get +1/+0. So it's fire breathing for your whole team. And then Unearth of 3 red. Meh. I'm not that excited by this, actually. I feel like if the ability, and it might have been too insane, but if the ability was activate for colorless, and you could be used by more decks, I'd probably be a little more excited about it. But the fact that I already have to have red, there's still better red dragons I would rather play. Like Atsushi's better. You know, I like the other dragon that whenever you cast a spell, you get to discard your hand, draw cards for the number of colors in the spell. Like, there's a few other things I'd rather play other than this, unfortunately. So yeah, like, it's neat, but this is more like, hey, I'm excited when I get it in draft kind of rare, more than I'm looking forward to playing this in standard kind of rare. Terror Ballista, 7 mana for a 5/3 with menace. Whenever the Ballista attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Has Unearth of 5, 3 black. Wow. So you attack, sack a creature, then your opponent has a sack. Oh no, you just destroy a creature. It's not even they have to sacrifice a creature. And it has menace. So your opponent has a double block, and you're going to get to do this every time. Interesting. This is a very, very interesting card. Because 7 seems like a lot, right? To get a 5/3 menace. And it does require some setup, because you need some other number of bodies to sacrifice, or else you're just attacking with the 5/3, and that's not the most exciting thing. But if you do, you get to eliminate the biggest thing you'd be concerned about on your opponent's side. They double block, meaning you're likely going to kill something, you know, being a 5 power creature. It's kind of a one and done, but it does have Unearth. So maybe the plan is to treat it as a spell and get it out of the graveyard one time, get to kill something and get 5 damage in. This is a weird one, because the more I'm thinking about it, like, it doesn't feel bad, but I guess because we don't have enough scope of what standard's going to look like yet, I don't even know where I'd fit this. So it's neat, but I can't give it high marks, I guess. Like, that's the way I feel about it. Like, it's interesting. I might try to build a deck with it. Maybe it goes into some of the Rakdos sacrifice decks that are already doing that, and you play into that whole theme, and now you have another way to try to close the clock faster. And then actually, now I'm thinking about it, maybe that's it. When it finds a home, maybe it's going to be really good in that deck, but kind of meh elsewhere. And that's okay. Some cards are meant to be that way. All right. Legions to Ashes. Colorless, white-black sorcery. Exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls, and all tokens that player controls with the same name as that permanent. Okay, that's fair. So if you destroy like a 1/1 soldier, it gets rid of all the other soldiers. All right, that's not bad. And it just destroys a target non-land permanent for 3 mana. Like, that's just good. This could have some room in other formats as well, depending on what things look like. But yeah, I don't have a problem with this. The other interesting thing is, too, this could destroy all of the Power Stones. Because it's a non-land permanent, and then all tokens that player controls with the same name. And it doesn't destroy your Power Stones, because it just says that player controls. Yeah, this might actually get played. Like, even if you only get one thing, you get to, for 3 mana, destroy whatever you want. So it's gonna get played. You know what I mean? Like, it's playable already. But the fact that it has the upside of being able to wipe out potentially multiple things, or just being good against token decks, your token decks almost have to make a variety of tokens now, or this could be a problem. So yeah, this card is actually decent. It's definitely, actually not even decent. I think this card's actually good. So yeah, this is a commander card. It's not really in the set, but whatever. It looks neat. The Archimandrite, which is a wild name. It's Jeskai, so 2 colorless, blue, red, white. Human Advisor, 0/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life, where X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. Whenever you gain life, each advisor, artificer, and monk you control gains vigilance and gets +X+0 till the turn where X is the amount of life you gained. Ooh, tap 3 untapped advisors, artificers, and or monks you control and draw a card. Wow, this thing does a lot of stuff, man, for 5 mana. Now, admittedly, it's an 0/5, so it doesn't do much. But the 3 abilities are gain life. Now, admittedly, unless you have like Reliquary Tower or something or whatever, you're probably not gaining more than a couple life. But either way, you gain some life. Then effectively your team, assuming you built on theme, all get +X equal to however much that life was. And then, which doesn't have to be done as a sorcery, you can tap things and draw a card. Yeah, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. If you're into that, this is solid. This is another commander card, but Staff of Titania. I kind of just wanted to see what it does, but it's 2 colorless equipment. Equipped creature gets +S/+S, where X is the number of forests you control. Whenever equipped creature attacks, create a 1/1 green forest dryad land token. I mean, I guess if you're going to load up on forest and you're doing just like the elf deck and you don't have a lot of other things, or you have Yavimaya that turns all the lands into forest, this is solid. You just get a big old body your opponent has to deal with, and you keep producing lands that are also creatures. That seems all right. Yeah, this is just solid. Really, is the only thing to say about this one. This is also a commander card, but whatever. 4 colorless, green for a 6/6 elemental. All right, it's a big old body for 6. Nothing wrong with that. You may play forest from your graveyard. Also cool. Whenever a forest enters the battlefield under your control, create a 5/3 elemental creature token. When an elemental you control dies, you mill 3 cards. Wow. Yeah, this is a body. It's kind of this is a body. That's all you can really say about this. Like, this is a big old body that just makes more bodies. Like, wow. Actually, this with the staff, because you get a forest dryad creature that says when a forest enters the battlefield, so you would attack with some gigantic sized body. You would make a 1/1 that could make mana, but then you also would be making a 5/3 every single time you attacked. And then if by chance one of those went to the graveyard, then you just mill 3 cards. So you could have more forest to play from your graveyard. Yeah, this is a pretty wacky, cool card. Very different. Very neat, though. I like it. All right, a regular set card. What is up with this art? This dog looks so demented. Look at, like, what? What's even going on? Oh, this is crazy. Okay, so Rescue Retriever. 3 colorless, white. It's a dog soldier, which soldier is important because that's a key creature type in this set. It's a 3/3. It has flash. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other soldier you control, so that's pretty cool. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to other attacking soldiers you control. This is actually a pretty cool combat trick. Like, if you want to, just during your opponent's instep, you play it, pump your team. But if your opponent blocks a way you don't like, you put this into play, you pump your team, and you prevent the damage from the attacking soldiers. Like, this is cool. Like, is there enough to do a soldier theme deck straight up? Probably. We had a bunch from Dominaria United. Do you want your Soldier Lord being a 5 mana one-time thing, putting counters on stuff? That's a little bit different, but it can also protect your team in a lot of situations. So how many would you even play? I don't know. 5's a lot. Maybe we're playing at least 2. I don't know if we're playing 3 or 4, but it's cool. It's neat, and it's got a wild-looking dog on the artwork, so that's got to count for something. This is a commander rare, but the art's just cool, so I just want to take a look at it. But it's Disciple of Kalis Nin. It's a 5 mana, so 4 colorless and a white for a 3/4 human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, starting with you, each player chooses up to 5 permanents they control. All permanents other than Disciple that weren't chosen this way phase out. Permanents can't phase in. Whoa! So wait. So everybody chooses 5 things, and then all permanents other than this and the things that were chosen phase out. So we all get 5 things. That's it until this dies. This is strong. Like, this is rough. Like, man. Wow. This is a magic card, isn't it? Yeah, this is something. Wow. I don't know. Like, the weird part is I don't even know if this is good or bad. Like, truthfully, like, I guess if your opponents are about to cast a big thing or have, like, I don't know, a 5 or 6 piece Rube Goldberg thing set up and you're trying to disrupt it, like, maybe. But yeah, and that means you lose your lands too because it's all permanents. So yeah, it's damn interesting. That's all I know. I don't know what to do with it, but it is interesting. All right, this one is another language, so it's got a translation here of hostile negotiation. Exile the top 3 cards of your library in a pile face down. Then exile the 3 cards of your library. Then exile the maybe this somebody wrote this wrong. So then exile the 3 cards of your library in another pile face down. Look at the cards and turn a what is yes, this is a bad translation of this. Look at the cards and turn a pile of your choice face up. An opponent chooses okay. I got it. I see what they're saying now. Okay. So you take 3 cards, you put them in a pile face down. Then you take the next 3 cards, I think is what they're trying to say. You put those in a pile. Then you look at all the cards, but then you put 1 pile face up and you leave 1 pile face down. And then the opponent chooses a pile. Put that pile into your hand and the other in your graveyard. You lose 3 life. Okay. It is an instant, by the way. This is actually a really, really interesting card, right? Because it's that whole, like, the devil you know, the devil you don't know kind of situation, right? Because if you're the opponent and you have to choose, your opponent's going to give you visibility on 3 cards, 3 unknowns. And you have to decide, why did they show me those particular 3? Right? Because if they show you 3 bad ones, it's because, like, they want the lands or whatever. So do you give them the other thing? Or if it's like a couple of good ones and 1 bad one, like, is that worse? Or maybe there's 1 really good card there and they know it's a really good card that you might be afraid of. So they're hoping you don't give them that pile. Like, this has some play to it. I actually really like the psychology this is going to lead to. This is like way back in the day when we had to get really good at making fact or fiction piles. Like, you had to learn a lot back then. This is actually really neat. And to be honest, 3 cards, regardless of which pile you get, for 4 mana and 3 life, doesn't feel that bad in black. Like, that's actually pretty reasonable. So at instant speed even. So this card, I think, is actually going to get played, as weird as it is. And it even puts cards in the graveyard. So they don't even go in the back into your deck. So you could work into a situation where you get what you want, or it goes to the graveyard. And then if you have stuff with flashback or unearth or whatever, you don't care anyway, right? You're either getting them in hand or you're getting them in the graveyard. Both of them work out for you. So yeah, this is a pretty good card. It's interesting as hell. All right, Titania's command, which is more expensive than the other commands we've seen so far. 4 colorless, green, sorcery. You choose 2. Exile target creature's graveyard. You gain 1 life for each card exiled this way. Oh, that's pretty good. Search your library for up to 2 lands. Put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Not bad. Create 2/2/2 green bear creature tokens. Meh. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you can. Oh, okay. On each creature. That's solid. Wow. For 6 mana. Ugh. Like, 6 mana, pump on my team for 2. That seems pretty good. And I get another rider on top of it. They also put the +1/+1s on the bottom. So when you make the bears will be in play first. So you get to pump your bears as well. So minimum, you're getting, worst case scenario, if there's nothing else to remove and you already have all the mana you want, you're getting 2 4/4s for 6 mana. Right? You get 2/2/2 bears and each one gets 2 counters. That's actually reasonable. Now, the ability to remove somebody's graveyard and then get life for every card moved, that's actually really strong. The concern I have here, though, is like, it's another graveyard hate card. And we already have a lot, man. We have a lot of graveyard hate. And we've also added Unearth. So it's like, how good can Unearth be in a world where we just keep adding more and more and more removal? And it's not even like we have cards. It's not like Tormod's Crypt, right? Where they only remove graveyards. They only do the one thing. Like, you have stuff like this that does multiple good things. Or like the Unlicensed Hearse that, like, removes stuff and turns into a big creature, right? So, I don't know. But this card itself, I think, is playable. Likely more as a sideboard card, though, in, best of 3. Depending on what type of deck you're playing, you could splash one in regular best of one. I can see some scenarios with Kodama and playing modified stuff because you can already advance your mana. Playing 6 won't be that difficult. So, man, maybe. We'll see where this goes. But it's a neat card if nothing else. Gwyna, Eyes of Gaia. 2 colorless and a green for a legendary creature, elf, druid, scout. So checking a few boxes here. It's a 2/3. Tap, add 2 mana in any color combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activated abilities of a creature or creature card. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on Gwyna and untap it. I like this card. Oddly, this almost feels like it belonged more in a commander set than a regular standard set, but like a 3 mana 2/3. You get to tap for 2 mana, has to be for creatures or creature abilities. But if you play a big body, you get to put counters on this and untap it and then use the mana again. So it almost makes that 5 mana thing cost 3 technically. And then you get to reset and use 2 mana for something else. So this is solid. Again, I don't think it's, I mean, I'd have to go back and look at how many elves we even have to build with in standard right now. I don't think it's a ton. I mean, we did build an elf deck to start last season, so I guess it's possible. I don't think I played anything that was 5+ that could take advantage of this, but it does make it easier to cast stuff like Fleetfoot Dancer that's 3 colors or whatever. So maybe? I don't know. This is cool. This is an interesting card, though. I like the design of it. I like what it's doing. It speaks to playing really big creatures. This is something I would play in my commander deck with Rith, because the whole goal is to play big bodies. So, you know, getting to reuse mana and all that would be kind of cool. So yeah, this definitely will have home somewhere, but I think it's more in commander than anything. Defabricate. It's a colorless and a blue instant. Choose one. Counter target artifact or enchantment spell. If a spell is countered this way, you exile it. Or counter target activated or triggered ability. This is a solid counter, right? Obviously, if you're playing 75 cards and you're playing best of 3, sure, a couple of these can make their way into the sideboard. Could also be a case of if the format goes heavy on artifacts, power stones, whatever, this could end up being really good. Being able to counter an activated ability, though, is also, or triggered ability, is also very, very good. So this is never going to be dead, right? This is going to be something you can do with this card every game. So even playing a couple main deck in best of 1 is not going to be the worst case scenario. This is actually a very useful card. Battery Bearer. 2 colorless, green, blue, 3/4, human artificer. Creatures you control have tap, add a colorless. This mana can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell. So you can only, why is it worded like that? So this mana can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell, which means you can only use the mana to cast artifacts. That's so, okay. Whenever you cast an artifact spell with mana value 6 or greater, draw a card. Okay, well, the wording's, while slightly confusing, with a slight double negative action there, seems okay. Like, if I'm playing something that's playing really big cost stuff, you know, we've seen several in the previews already, this is actually reasonable. Lets all your creatures tap to add colorless. Obviously, you have to play artifacts with it, so that's fine. But you'd also get to draw cards, which is pretty cool. And even if you don't use this ability per se to cast your things, just every artifact that's 6 or greater, you get to draw a card. So that seems good. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Like, I don't think it's a great card by any stretch, but if it's part of a tool of things you're doing and you're already making all the power stones and doing all the big things, like, this is just one more thing to keep your hand fueled. And it's a 3/4 body, so it's not like it's the smallest thing. It can block up pretty well. So like, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I'm not like overjoyed about it, but I may find a way to squeeze it into a deck or two. Sarenth Steel Seeker. That is a name. All right, so colorless and a green for a 1/2 human artificer scout. Whenever an artificer, or actually no, whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. If you don't put a card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. So 2 mana, you look at your top card. If it's a land, it goes in your hand. If not, you can put it in the graveyard or leave it on top. You know, the thing is, this is whenever an artifact enters a battlefield, though. It's not even when this enters the battlefield, which isn't a big deal. It's actually better. But if you have a bunch of things making power stones, this is actually pretty cool because not when you cast an artifact, it's just when it enters the battlefield. So anything making Power Stones is basically like Scry 1. Actually, no, it's a Surveil 1, right? Because that's the one that puts it in your graveyard. So, like, that's pretty strong, right? You either get a land or you get to do whatever you want to do with the top card. So, yeah, this might, like, this is a very unassuming card that might end up being very good. Like, I almost dismissed it, and the more I thought about it, and the Power Stones coming into play, and so many things making Power Stones, I'm like, hold up, this might actually have some real value. So yeah, I might be trying to find a way to use this at some point. This is kind of cool. All right, Hulking Metamorph. It is, wow, this one's 9 for a 7/7 and has a huge block of text. Shapeshifter, artifact creature, 2 colorless, blue for a 3/3 instead. But you may have Hulking Metamorph enter the battlefield as a copy of an artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact creature in addition to its other types. And its power and toughness are equal to Hulking Metamorph's power and toughness. Nice. So this comes into play. It copies whatever creature or artifact you want, but it stays an artifact creature and has its own power and toughness. This seems pretty strong in a world where we're going to be probably playing a lot of artifacts as well. You get the option, because 4 mana for a 3/3 that copies anything in play isn't that bad, all things considered. I mean, we have a bunch of different clone effects that are 3, or actually are 4 and 5 mana, so that's not that weird. You get a solid 3/3 body, regardless of what happens. If you get it late, you have a ridiculous 7/7 body. But yeah, this might actually be all right. Might be right. And it's when it enters the battlefield. So this isn't even when you cast it. So you could reanimate this and have this be a copy of some other absurd thing you already have in play. Like, you could literally, in a reanimator deck, play this and like copy a Titan or something, right? So there's some wild stuff you might be able to do with this card that's very interesting. So, yeah. Now, would I call it good? I don't know. It's an uncommon, so it doesn't have to be great, but definitely at least gets me thinking, and that's not a bad thing. You have a Horned Stone Seeker, which is actually kind of, what is this guy? He's like a cute little lizard that's like carrying vegetables on his back or something. Maybe they're bombs. I don't know. A colorless and a red for a 2/2 creature lizard menace. When it enters the battlefield, create a tapped Power Stone. When it leaves the battlefield, sacrifice a Power Stone. So this is kind of cool. You get like a mana artifact on loan, effectively. Like, you play it, you get a thing, next turn you have more mana available. But if this dies, you lose your mana ramp. So I kind of like this, because if you ended up in a weird situation where, let's say you only had, maybe you didn't get your 4th land or something, right? And you're sort of relying on this Power Stone, you're no longer going to want to attack with the little Stone Seeker because you don't want to put your mana at risk, which is kind of funny. It does have Menace, though, so it's hard to block. That's neat. It's not really any popular creature type, so that's a letdown. You know, do mono red decks, do Gruul decks, whatever want this. Probably not, because there's a bunch of other quality stuff to play in the 2 slot. But I do like what this card's doing. It's not bad. You know, if I have a deck and the theme is, you know, something to do with a lot of Power Stones, then I probably just consider this over a bunch of other cards anyway, because it just makes a Power Stone while also giving me an early body, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We have Steel Exemplar. It is an artifact creature wizard for a 4/4 for 5 mana. It enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, unless 2 or more colors of mana were spent to cast this. So if you cast it with just colorless mana, or 1 color of mana, it's a 5 mana 6/6 with trample. If you use more than 1 color, then it's just a 4/4 with trample. Not bad. I mean, a 5 mana 5/5 with trample. All right. I mean, I could get with that. It's not like the best thing, but not bad either. And even in a 2-color deck, you could find ways to spend colorless mana and 1 color of mana to get to 5 and not necessarily have it be 2 colors anyway. So that's a thing. Exciting? Not really, but it's at least an interesting design on a card. Symmetry Matrix. 4 colorless. Artifact. When a creature with power equal to its toughness enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 1 colorless. If you do, draw a card. Okay. This is different. So if we're playing Grizzly Bears, 2/2s, 3/3s, 4/4s, we get to pay an additional one. So basically say pay 1 kicker, draw a card. That's kind of interesting. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like, does a creature deck want to pay 4 mana to be able to pay 1 more on each creature and draw a card? I don't think you do, which is a shame. Because, like, the idea, like if this costs less, like if it was even 3, I think there's a higher chance I would play it. But at 4, I feel like everything at 4 and 5 does so much more that I can't see myself really spending mana on. Now, let me take that back. In a world where I'm playing a deck that already has a bunch of Power Stones, so I'm going to have spare mana laying around, and I'm playing artifact creatures or whatever, then like maybe I go ahead and do that, and then just, you know, use the Power Stones to draw cards and maybe cast whatever else I drew that turn. So that wouldn't be bad. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be one we see pop up in a lot of decks. It may at best be 1 or 2 very specific builds, which is kind of tough because I like the idea, and the art's actually pretty cool in this card too. But yeah, just may not be one of those cards. And then I think this is our last one for the day. So it's Haywire Might. 1 for a 1/1. Okay, insect. Haywire Might dies, you gain 2 life. Sure. You can pay 1 green, sacrifice it, exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. All right, that's solid. So you pay 1, you get a 1/1 creature. It does, I mean, it's just a 1/1 PUD. It doesn't really do anything. But if you were to pay a green and sacrifice it, you could destroy an artifact or an enchantment that's not a creature and gain 2 life. That actually seems like reasonable value. Again, do the creature decks really want this over something else? Not terribly, to be honest, but there might be a home for this and something that's wants artifact creatures, but also wants this ability. Like, we still have a werewolf that we could do this effectively. We wouldn't get the 2 life, obviously, but it does have upside that if it flips, you can just destroy artifacts and enchantments, and it doesn't have the creature restriction. So maybe, but I will also say, if we end up in a world where there are a ton of artifacts because of this set, then you're probably going to want to double down on artifact destruction effects. And if you can get one that comes on the back of a creature, that's going to be all that much better. So yeah, this is one of those uncommons I might keep my eye on just to see which way the format shapes first and then decide the value of the card. My goodness, that was a lot of stuff. And like, we don't even know like how these prototype things are going to work out, because some seem really good, even some of the uncommon ones. Like, the versatility of the cards we're getting is really powerful. Like, I don't know, what was the best card that got preview day that stood out to you? Because I have a few things myself. Like, this leaves a lot of room for deck building, and that's awesome. So yeah, y'all let me know how you feel about it. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.